Welcome back, everyone. I hope you're all awesome. It's time for another installment of Friday Q&A, and a word of warning, there's a big flock of birds in the backyard at the moment, so if you hear kind of like the sounds of possessed souls screaming in the backyard, it's just a bunch of Australian native birds. That's what they do. But thank you so much for this week's questions. As always, if you have questions you would like me to answer in next week's Q&A, please put them in the comments below. I got a real big kick this week out of reading through everybody's stories about their first guitar. I asked last week, hey, tell me what was your first guitar? But what was really interesting was it wasn't just the guitar, it was the story and kind of the background about how you got the guitar. So that was really interesting. Kind of made me think about my first instruments and getting into playing, and that period in my life, learning this new exciting thing called guitar and being exposed to new styles of music. And I love revisiting that connection you have when you fall in love with something for the first time. So thank you all for sharing that. You should probably all tell me what the band was that got you into music for this week. I would love to hear that story, because I was reading about the first guitars, thinking about my first guitars, and it just linked so closely to the stuff that got me into music. So let me know about that in the comments section this week. I would love to read through that, and seeing similar experiences between myself and so many people who commented with the guitars. I imagine it's a similar thing with just music in general. You know, when you get the bug, it hits you hard. If you want some free cabinet IRs, or you want to join the Discord server, there are links in the video description. There's also links to my Patreon and links to the music that I make with Ragdoll if you want to visit those and you're interested in supporting the channel. All right, let's get into this week's questions. Lots of questions about the Synthwave remix that I did for the Ragdoll song Love on the Run. That kind of started off as a bit of a joke a little while ago, and because April Fool's was coming up, I said to the guys, hey, I'm going to put this out and I'm going to do a little video for it. So I went back and looked at a bunch of footage we've collected from touring over the years, and it was really lovely to revisit all of that, and you know, the kind of fake camcorder footage, and that was a really fun experience. I will put a breakdown of the actual mix and the virtual instruments that I used to make that mix up on my Patreon over the weekend. So if you're a patron, look out for that one. It's probably going to be a really interesting one, because a lot of that stuff was a great learning experience for me, and hopefully I can pass on some tips and tricks there. So aside from that, the specific questions asked on the Q&A last week: can I make a preset based on Mark Tremonti's guitar tone? If you just go and check out some of my personal presets, they're probably pretty similar. I really like Alter Bridge, and you know, a lot of the stuff Mark does, we kind of do with the Ragdoll stuff in terms of, you know, just even the guitar sounds and the layering and the production approach there. And they're a band we often get compared to. So maybe just go and check out my personal preset, whether it's with the Boogies or whether it's a more kind of Marshall styled thing. And yeah, Mark is such an amazing player, and he has such a great distinctive sound, which I think is kind of a rare thing these days. So maybe start there. This one is from Max Carton. Shout out to Max, he's got a great channel on here. Would I recommend a Sir Aldrich over a PRS HFS pickup as a replacement? You know, I've actually got an Aldrich pickup. I don't think it's in a guitar at the moment. I put it in one of my guitars, and while I liked it, because I love Doug and I love his guitar sound, I don't think it was the right fit for the way I like to dial things in, and I actually went back to just a set of Duncans. So yeah, it's not a bad pickup by any means. It is really hot. I found it kind of hard to get the kind of crunchy, vintagey things out of it, but it was amazing for the searing lead stuff. I replaced the HFS in my green PRS with just a Duncan JB. I've got a JB Jazz set in there, which is like the most Stockington of stock pickup selections, but I think it sounds great in there. So maybe start with the good old JB, and if that doesn't do it for you, try some of the Sir stuff. I've tried their HSV. Is that the one? That's a really good pickup as well. So yeah, Sir make great stuff. I've got their pickups in my Strat, the Landau ones. They're probably my favorite Strat pickups ever. So, and I don't know about the spacing. Maybe just contact PRS about that, and they should be able to hook you up with that info. This next one, what is my favorite delay pedal? Ooh, this is a good one. Can I say the FM3? Does that count? Because it has all the Fractal delays in it, including the multi-delay as well, which is probably my favorite delay ever in the entire universe. But if we're going to restrict our attention to pedals, Two candidates, one the Boss DD20, that was my first delay pedal. I remember when that came out and visiting the Boss website and seeing this thing and just being blown away by the fact it was a double pedal and it had so many modes and so much delay time. And I did a lot of gigging with that and really, really hammered it. The analog delay mode on that is amazing, well worth the price of entry alone. And I got a Strymon Dig recently, just on a whim, came up cheap, bought it. Probably my favorite delay pedal at the moment, just for that 12-bit delay mode and the fact it does the dual delay thing that I like so much. So probably the Dig and the DD20. I've got a Boss DM2, an old vintage one, and that one is really kind of funky and fun as well. So they would be my main candidates for delays. But of course nowadays I just use the Fractal for everything, and the stereo BBD and the 2290 mode in there are, they're amazing. They're perfect for what I like. So yeah, great question. Have I tried the Boss Nextone amps? Once. One of my students has them and I went around to set it up for them, and I was really impressed with how loud it was. I'm not too keyed in on the difference between those and the Katanas though, and I really like the Katana. That's kind of the amp that I recommend to a lot of my students just because they work. So I imagine the Nextones are pretty cool as well. This one's from RTB Music asking about the Fender Tone Masters. That's an amp I haven't tried yet, but another one of my students has one and they're bringing it around in a couple of weeks. So hopefully I can actually try one firsthand and see if they live up to the hype. Yeah, and as you said, RTB Music, I guess I am pretty diplomatic here. I just like to talk about stuff that I really like, and hopefully I can turn people on to good stuff. There's plenty of channels out there which I think do a much better job of critiquing gear that maybe isn't great. So I kind of leave that to them, although there is lots of gear that I don't think is great. And if you don't see it on here, it's probably because I don't think it's great. I probably think it's garbage. And there is that thing where it's like, do I want to spend a few hours of my life making a video talking about something that I'm not excited about, or am I going to spend that time talking about something I am excited about? It's a pretty easy choice for me in that particular case. So yeah, that's probably why. And in general, I think with YouTube advertising and influencer marketing, which is what I do and which is what everybody else doing what I do does, you do get that inherent type of bias creep into everything. I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing or a good thing or anything like that. People who have bought a piece of gear and spent money on it also have an inherent bias in there as well. So yeah, that's a whole video for another time though. But excellent question. I'm looking forward to trying the Tone Master. Will there be videos with Queensrÿche as the subject? Yes. I know I've been saying that for probably 2 years now, but I really, really do need to do that. I've been listening to Empire a lot recently and just digging the production and digging the songs. So excellent question from Joshua Floyd. Shout out to Josh, long time viewer. Always love the questions you ask. Alrighty, this one's from Emmanuel. I got an FC12, the big Fractal pedal, and I have to say, as much as I love the FC6, I do like the 12 better. I did a gig recently with the FM3 and an FC12, and it was amazing having so much control there. Almost too much control. I spent lots more time stepping on things and being like, ooh, I can turn a phaser on for 3 seconds here. So I actually kind of, I don't know if I like that more than just having 3 buttons on the FM3 where it's like 4 scenes, I can just play and perform and not worry about stepping on things. With the FC12, I step on things way more and pull way more textures. So probably dependent on different gigs. It's an amazing, amazing thing when you integrate it with the Axe FX3 or FM3 as well. Having your scenes, your effects, your control switches all on one layout. Amazing. The FC6 though with views as well is amazing for its size. So yes, I have been enjoying that a lot. I should do a video with both of them together. The old OMG 15 setup. So very well spotted right there. I do have a few videos that I've been doing for G66 where you can check out some of my layouts and things I'm using with the FC12 as well. This one's from Ron Dress. Would love to see a video on spillover on the Axe FX3. Are you talking about spillover between presets? That's interesting and not something I've played around with a lot because I normally use one preset live, but that's why I like parallel effects routing a lot of the time. And if you set the routing for mute effects in, I think then you'll get delay tails and stuff like that. I kind of rely on that for a lot of stuff live. This one's from Cole Lewis. Also shout out to Cole. Leon, how do you get rid of the pickup mount from a Fishman triple play? That was really stuck on there. That was a little bit of a kind of, am I going to rip a bunch of finish off kind of moment. So what I did was I got basically a post-it note, and I got that under the first little bit, and then I got a flathead screwdriver and just like pulled a little bit up, and I pulled it really slowly. I don't know if that's a very good procedure in that case. I'm sure there's probably some people who are far more skilled at removing adhesives in the comment section who can weigh in there. So that would be awesome if someone could actually tell me how to do that consistently. But yeah, I kind of got lucky with that, and I had 10 minutes to do it. So it's just a tiny little bit of a ball ache, but I got it off without scratching anything or pulling any finish up. So it should work. But again, don't try this at home, kids. This one's from C Shades. Can I do a demo of the Soldano SLO 100 plugin from Neural DSP? I've downloaded the demo. I haven't installed it yet. Had a bit of a crazy week, although it is the Easter long weekend here in Australia, the land of the long weekend. Hopefully I can try it out, and if I like it, I will do a video with it. This one's from Ty Woodruff. Would love to hear what kind of tones I can get with the Pod Go. Shout out to friend of the channel, Troy Nababan. He's got a Pod Go. I've been meaning to borrow it off him. Did a gig with Troy last weekend, and he used it on bass, and it sounded fantastic. So yeah, Pod Go's pretty awesome. This one's from Gohandes 1. Have I tried an 11 rack, and could I demo it? That is on the list of old rack stuff, even though it's not that old compared to stuff like ADAs and Roland SRVs and stuff like that. I've actually never really played one. I remember when they came out, I was considering checking one out, and then someone told me, they're like, oh man, no, the Axe FX is way better, and I didn't check out either of them for too long. So should do that. I think, who was using those for a while? I forget. Anyway, someone I know loved them years later, so should probably get around to checking that one out. This one is from Mudder1310. What guitar influences would surprise your fans or followers the most? That's interesting. That's a thought-provoking question. This might be the question of the week. In terms of guitar influences, I would probably say, for me, I really like Daniel Lanois stuff, which, you know, a lot of people know about Daniel because of his production for U2, and like you could argue that some of his sounds have now become some of the most iconic sounds via the Edge. So I love his stuff. The My Bloody Valentine stuff, Kevin Shields, I think is an amazing musician. Another band I really like, God is an Astronaut, Mono, all that kind of post-rock, noise rock, Slow Dive as well. Just a lot of that textural stuff I really enjoy, and I try to work it into my recordings. It's not the stuff I play a lot in demo videos, because you do that stuff and people say, hey man, why don't you just play a blues riff or something? And then you play a blues riff and a bunch of people tell you like, oh, dad rock. Which just goes to show that, you know, you're never going to make anyone happy, so don't bother doing it, which is why I just like to play kind of whatever I want. And I love playing 70s and 80s riffs. So yeah, in terms of that, who else would be a big influence on my playing that maybe people wouldn't guess from the way I play guitar? You know, when I tell people, hey, Alex Lifeson, Ty Tabor, Paul Gilbert, Yngwie Malmsteen, John Sykes, John Norum, they go, yeah, that kind of makes sense. You know what's probably actually a big surprise to a lot of people? I wouldn't really consider Eddie Van Halen a very big influence on my playing. I didn't listen to a lot of Eddie when I was kind of learning the guitar and forming my, you know, kind of sound. I love Eddie's playing, especially when my uncle introduced him to me. But that was more like Van Halen as a package I got into. Eddie's stuff directly is still a mystery to me. I really can't do any of that stuff. So yeah, he's not a very big influence. Hendrix, I came to a lot later as well. I got into Robin Trower way before I got into Hendrix. So yeah, that's these kind of strange little things that you run across. Yeah, interesting stuff. Really good question. I'm sure there's a bunch of other guitar players. You know, in terms of just guitar as well, like people who aren't really considered, you know, guitar players who do amazing stuff on the guitar. Nick Drake would be one of those. Love love the way he uses a guitar or use the guitar with his voice and his tunings and stuff like that. Joni Mitchell would be another one. Yeah, a lot of those kind of just amazing singer-songwriters, the way they use the guitar to support their voice is something else. So yeah, a lot of that kind of stuff I'm super into. So yeah. Anyway, here's a bunch of John Sykes licks. That's normally what I kind of revert to. So yeah, anyway, that's a great question. Thank you for that. I'm going to think about that one all weekend now. This one's from Michael Parkinson. Being from Perth, have I ever had any dealings with Pitbull guitars? I haven't. I should check them out. I actually just haven't heard of them at all. So I can use the internet and look up that. This one's from Tordenstein. What do I think of Trouble? Yes, I love me some Trouble. Another great band to check out if you like Trouble and you like Sabbath and you kind of like Doom-inspired stuff is a band called Orchid. They are just one of my favorite kind of retro heavy bands of all time, and the singer, Theo, really reminds me of the singer from Trouble. So if you want to hear a Trouble cross Black Sabbath thing, go and check out some Orchid. Their album Capricorn is like the best Black Sabbath album that Black Sabbath never did, and it's one of my favorite albums of all time. I love the way it sounds, I love the songs, love the riffs, and yeah, because I also love Trouble as well. They've got some really cool stuff. Kind of similar thing to John Oliver from Sabotage as well, that I don't know, just that ability to shriek while singing. It's different to like a kind of modern, you know, post-hardcore or death metal kind of scream. It really is this intense shriek that those guys had going on, you know, channeling demons like the birds in the backyard. So yeah, very, very interesting. This one's from Bedders, talking about the coral sitar looking thing on the wall over here, which is a Dan Electro coral sitar. My wife got me this for my birthday a few years ago. I played an original Jerry Jones at Guitar Center in LA in 2015 when we were there, and loved it, and she kind of took note of that and found this for me, and it's very, very cool. I need to change the strings because they are pretty crusty, but I really love this thing. One of my goals is to record a guitar solo with it on a record at some point. So the next Ragdoll album, I really want to use this thing for a whole guitar solo on it. This buzz bridge is really interesting. You have to play with a really light touch. Yeah, interesting. Well, I just find I play A7 sus4 as soon as I pick this up. Very, very cool guitar. 2 more questions. Any axe wizardry I can do to make my EMG 81s sound like single coils? Simba, I think you've stumped me there. I have no idea. Absolutely no idea, especially because the sound of particular pickups, you have these characteristics like single coils have a really distinct resonant peak on them, which can be kind of hard to emulate, and then the tone controls, and you have a lot of non-linear relationships in there, or non-obvious relationships in there that happen, and EMGs are kind of a lot flatter than a typical pickup. So yeah, that's a real tricky one. Maybe pull out a bunch of low mid-range using the amp input EQ and bump, like look up what a typical resonant peak is for a single coil pickup. It's probably around the 2 to 3K range, and give it a nice little bump there. You could use a multi-band compressor as a dynamic EQ to do that. That might be one approach, but yeah, that's kind of a tricky one. Very, I don't have a guitar with EMGs. I really should. I feel like I should just have a guitar with EMGs as a reference point for this kind of thing. So yeah, that's a tricky one. And Nubosaurus gets the last one. This is going to be the last question: Tupac or Biggie? You know, you got to put this in context for me. When I was growing up, it was when Eminem was happening. So that's my ground zero for rap. So I kind of missed the Tupac and Biggie thing, and I think my exposure to it as a kid was probably that, you know, the Biggie Smalls episode of South Park. So for that reason, let's go with Biggie. And I will say to all of you, have a very safe, very happy Easter break if you celebrate Easter, or even if you're like me and you don't really celebrate Easter, but it's a long weekend. So make the most of a long weekend. I hope you all have a great weekend, and I'll see you next time. Thanks for watching.